Hey there BookTube, welcome back to my channel. Today we're here to talk about my October reading plans. I'm going to mention some of the books that I'm looking at reading in October and beyond. I'm not calling this a TBR video necessarily because some of these are not books that I intend to finish in October. Some of them are books that I probably won't even get to if we look at the state of my previous TBR videos. But they're books that I have my sights set on because I want to participate in some of the readathons that are happening. I want to meet some of the challenges that other people have set. I want to participate in reading groups and read-alongs. So these are some of the books that I've set aside to tackle in October, and we'll see how far I get with them. October is celebrated here on BookTube as Victober, and the intent of Victober is to read books that were written during the Victorian era, books that were set in the United Kingdom. And I've never participated in Victober before because I'm really not a huge fan of classic literature. However, this year I jumped on the hype train, and there are some books that I've identified to participate in the readathon over the course of the month. Then there's the Gone with the Book readathon to read books that were published between 1900 and 1950, and the intent of that was to read them in the last 7 days of September, October, and November. I did really well with that. In September, I read 5 of the books that I had put on my 3-month TBR. So if I can keep that up and read 5 more books in October, that would be great. And then there are a few more read-alongs that I want to participate in. So I'll tell you about those as I show you the books. The first book that I want to show you is to participate in a read-along that is being hosted by Dee Dee from Brown Girl Reading. And that is to read The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. This is a 1,200 plus page book. So we're reading this over the course of October and November. I got this copy from the library, and I'm giving myself maybe up to the first 200 pages to see how into this book I get and whether I want to fill it with my annotations. And then I'll decide whether or not I want to buy my own copy. But for now, because I'm not sure that I'll be able to keep this out from the library for 2 months. So this is the first book that I want to tackle during October. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. I also want to participate in a read-along that's being hosted by Jason Harrigan, or at least I think that's still happening. Jason Harrigan is a pretty new booktuber, but I really enjoyed watching his videos, and he's a fan of Umberto Eco, and he announced a read-along sometime in October to read Foucault's Pendulum, which I've heard about but never really thought that I would get into it, and this is one of Jason Harrigan's favorite books. So he announced this read-along, but then his channel went down for some reason. It's been disabled, so I'm not sure that that's gonna happen, and I still don't have the book. I'm waiting to see if his channel comes back before I buy the book. But if it does and that read-along happens, then I'll talk to you some more about that. I guess as the days and weeks go by, I'll announce it in my Friday Reads video or something. Then I jumped on the hype train and got a book from the library that I wasn't thinking that I would get anytime soon. So even though I hadn't really intended to read it now, I'm going to be reading The Testaments by Margaret Atwood because, well, this is nominated for the Booker Prize, and the Booker winner is going to be announced in just about 10 days or so. So if I can read this, then maybe I can make a comparison with Quixote by Salman Rushdie, which is the only other shortlisted book that I've read so far. And I mean, a lot of people are talking about this, so I'm going to read it. It's a big book, so it's on my October TBR. You know, when you request books from the library and they come in and they're brand new copies, you just kind of can't help yourself. When I put my name on the reserve list for this book, there were hundreds of people in line before me. I didn't expect that this reserve would come in so quickly, but now that it did, it's on my TBR. Then we have the Gone with the Book readathon stack that I showed you in my Gone with the Book readathon TBR and recommendations video. If you haven't watched that, I'll link it in the description box down below, so you can go ahead and click that link and check it out. In that video, I talked a little bit about those books and why I chose them. So for now, I'll just show you the books that I still have here in physical format that I could possibly read in October. Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway and Orlando, Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises, Dubliners by James Joyce, and The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. Those are potentially books that I could pick up in the last 7 days in October if I'm not insanely occupied with everything else. And then there's some books that have been on my TBR for the last couple of months. Some of them are books that I have started to read. I'm in the process of reading but just haven't finished. So they're going to be making their way back onto my official October TBR. And that is J.M. Coetzee's Disgrace, Kingsley Amis, The Old Devils, The English Patient by Michael Andante, The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood, The Bone People by Carrie Hull, Milkman by Anna Burns, Schindler's Ark by Thomas Keneally. And all of these are previous Man Booker winners that I'm still trying to read before the end of the year, because I have a challenge to read all the Booker winning books before the end of December. We're way behind on that project. So if I could read some of these in October, I definitely will read some of these. I don't know how many of these I'll get to. That would be good if I could focus some time on actually finishing some of these books that I've already started and know that I need to read soon. Then we have other books that have been on my TBR for a while now. The Imperfectionists by Tom Rachman, Greed by Elfriede Jelinek. I've been reading this since Women in Translation Month, as is Flights by Olga Tokarczuk. I'm sure that I'm still mispronouncing this name, but please forgive me. And then there's Rites of Passage by Joy and Hensley. All of these have been on my TBR for months, and I just need to finish them up. And then there's another book that I had on my TBR in September, didn't get to, Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking. I want to read something by this author. So hopefully October will be the month where I pick that up. I also said I wanted to participate in Victober, right? And I didn't tell you any of the books that I've set aside for Victober. And that's because I don't actually have any of them in physical copy right here, right now. Victober is a month-long readathon. Like I said, it's being hosted by 4 booktubers. And I'll link their announcement videos in the description box down below if you haven't heard about Victober and want to check it out. Each one of the 4 hosts submitted a challenge to help us get into reading Victorian literature, and I did identify some books that I wanted to read that would potentially meet those challenges, and I haven't gotten any of them in physical form yet. So I'm already way behind in my Victober reading, but I'll tell you the challenges. I have them here on my computer. One of the hosts is Ange, and her challenge is to read a book by a Victorian female author. Bonus, one that's new to you, bonus points. What can you use bonus points for? Can you cash them in for BookTube cool points? I don't know. In any case, I selected Silas Marner by George Eliot in order to meet that challenge. I don't yet have a copy of that book. Another one of the hosts is Kate, and her challenge is to reread a Victorian book. And for that challenge, I identified Lorna Doone by R.D. Blackmore, because that's a book that I read as a child. It was one of my mother's favorites, and my mom owns a copy. She lives in Jamaica, so I don't have access to that book. So I reserved a copy from the library, and I'm waiting to see if it comes in. If it doesn't, then maybe I'll buy a copy online and potentially reread a book from my childhood. Another one of the hosts is Katie, and her challenge is to read a Victorian book that is either under 250 pages or one that is over 500 pages. And I'd like to do both. So for the under 250 pages, I'm thinking I'm going to read Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, which is one of the group reads. And for the over 500 pages, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. We're not sure how that's going to go yet. Then the final host is Lucy, and her challenge is to read a book from the same year as your favorite Victorian read. And I don't read a lot of Victorian books, but I did read Jane Eyre last year and really enjoyed it. So I'm going to call Jane Eyre my favorite Victorian classic. The year that Jane Eyre was published, Anthony Trollope published his book, The MacDermots of Ballycloran. I am trying to get a copy of that book, so if I get it, we'll see if I can meet that challenge by reading it. There are other challenges to read by candlelight. I don't know that that will happen. Then there's a group read along to read 2 plays by Oscar Wilde. First is The Importance of Being Earnest, and the other is A Woman of No Importance. I will probably be reading those in electronic format because I think those are pretty short and they're available online. So those are my plans to participate in Victober if I can get any of the books. If not, I'll just get some classics from my shelf. I do have a lot of classics around. I have a couple of Charles Dickens books on my shelf, as well as my husband has some classics that I have an untapped resource, people, because he has some books over there in that shelf that I never saw until recently when I started to clean. So I do have an untapped resource to get some more Victorian literature. I just will see how that goes. So these are my October reading plans, kind of sketching them out, not completely filling in all the details yet, but as the days and weeks go by, I'll update you on my reading. So those are some of my reading plans. I talked about 27 books in this video, and I don't think that I'll be reading 27 books in October, just because I tried in September to read 30 books and I only read 25. I don't think that October is going to be the month where I read even more than that. But I do want to see how many of these I can get to and what is going to be the best read of all of these. So we'll see at the end of the month how well I did in meeting some of these October reading goals. So these are my plans. I'd love to hear from you as well. What are the books that are on your TBR that you're most looking forward to getting to? And if I had to choose one or two books from this stack, I think The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, because he's one of the muckrakers, and Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, just because so many people have recommended this book to me. I'm looking forward to finally getting to it. So I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching this video. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Welcome to all the new people who've been subscribing. I'm not sure where you guys have come from, but I love that you're here and I hope that you stay. So let's talk in the comments, and until next time, happy reading. Bye.